Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine. I then commentate along, dropping facts and observations, and try to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about each episode might be.
Hi Toby, hi everybody. My name is Jason Thompson. Doctor Who has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. My fandom, though, only started in the very early 90s, which I credit to a well-stocked school library, a PE teacher, and a staggeringly improbable coincidence, which I may tell you about another time. The 90s was a period known as the wilderness years because Doctor Who wasn't being made on television, but there was plenty of Doctor Who in other media. There were plenty of books being released. Doctor Who magazine was going as strongly as it ever had, and there were loads of factual reference books being published as well, which was fantastic. But it was quite a wilderness in terms of availability of stories if you wanted to watch any, because at the time I started being a fan, only about 30 stories had actually been released on VHS, and there were still 110 episodes missing from the archives. One of those missing episodes is the subject of this podcast. It's a very odd episode. It's unique in the annals of Doctor Who, in that it is a Doctor Who episode with the Doctor entirely absent, and in fact the TARDIS and the regulars entirely absent as well. This was in the early years of Doctor Who when it was being somewhat experimental. Also, it was a random episode that had to be added to the running order because they cut down Planet of Giants from 4 episodes to 3, so they had a spare episode in the schedule but no actors available to record it from the regulars. It is, of course, Mission to the Unknown. Now, I particularly enjoy this episode, partly because of its uniqueness, but also because of the very strong associations I have with that period of my being a fan when all of this stuff was brand new. I am now one of those jaded old fans who's seen every episode and heard every soundtrack multiple times. So it's fun to remember how it was when it was all new and there was loads more stuff to discover. And I envy all the people I see on Twitter these days who are just discovering classic Doctor Who for the first time and seeing some of these stories that we're so familiar with we can recite them backwards and tell you the minutiae of how many takes were used for this scene and who designed that monster and so on and so forth. So at this time I attended it was actually a comics fair in Brighton, and one of the stalls that was there had some bootleg videos of orphaned episodes of Doctor Who and audio tapes of missing episodes of Doctor Who. None of this stuff was commercially available at the time, so this was the best we could hope for. So multi-generation copies of magnetic tape, hissing sounds, snowstorm videos, but it was all we could get hold of, and it was very, very exciting. And I acquired a tape which had Mission to the Unknown and the 10th Planet Part 4 on it, along with a videotape containing the 4 existing episodes of The Reign of Terror and parts 1 to 3 of The 10th Planet. And they were very well played. And I'd heard about Mission to the Unknown, and so I was intrigued, and what I heard on the tape was actually pretty decent quality, and I really enjoyed it. So, hopefully, Toby, you will enjoy it as well, and if you come back later, I will tell you 4 things that I really love about this episode.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this edition of Happy Times and Places, in which I, Toby Haydock, will not be appearing. Instead, for 1 week only, no, it's going to be me, sorry, and Jason Thompson, a returning contributor. There are a few of those, but Jason is the first one to, I think, feature. As I say, I've got some people who you've heard on previous missions into Happy Times and Places have recorded other installments, but this is the first time I think I've visited one, partially because I'm keen to get to 100, but in between 95 and 100 I'm trying to put some stories that have a sort of milestone element to them, just to make the approach to 100 exciting. but also because this is a one-episode story. Because Happy Times and Places is numbered according to story covered, I can do this a little bit quicker. That was my main intention, to be honest. And I'd even forgotten who I had charged with doing this. And Jason, of course, has the distinction of being one of the rare people I've actually beaten. So yes, it ends much like, well, I don't want to spoil the end of Mission to the Unknown, but it's a rare downbeat ending, and so let's hope that it's a rare upbeat ending for me. And history repeats itself, because when Jason and I did a Christmas Carol together, I defeated him by choosing a higher number of things that tallied with his favourite things than didn't. Now, what we agreed, Jason and I, was to do 4 things, because Mission to the Unknown is a one-off. It seemed a shame just to do 1 or 1 and a bonus. So we've got to wrestle 4 favourite things between us. So let's see how we do. First, I'll give you... That was a great introduction from Jason there, and I'll give you... Because I had a slightly odd introduction to Mission to the Unknown, and indeed to old Doctor Who stories, because I had a copy of a Doctor Who magazine that had been picked up somewhere or was around the house. Remember, I'm the youngest of 4 kids, but so I don't know, but it was a yellowed thing. Maybe I borrowed it from a friend at school. I don't quite remember. Maybe I had, because my friend Ollie sometimes got Doctor Who magazines, or he had some lying around that he lent me. But anyway, the first Doctor Who archives I ever came across in a Doctor Who magazine was Mission to the Unknown. And of course, I was young. I didn't know what archives meant. In fact, for some time, I thought is it Doctor Who Achieves? I knew it wasn't Doctor Who Achieves, but that was the only thing I could make sort of sense of. These are the stories that it has achieved or something. I don't know. I knew it wasn't quite right, but I couldn't quite make sense of it. I certainly didn't know what archives were. But of course, this thing in the Doctor Who archives was a story, it seemed to me. But it wasn't like a Doctor Who story, because then for me, all Doctor Who stories were 4 episodes long. That was certainly something I laboured under for some time, because I'm a child of season 15. So yeah, so maybe I don't remember Invasion of Time. Anyway, it doesn't matter. For all the Doctor Who stories I was cognizant of were 4 episodes. So this was just a storyline, and of course it didn't have the Doctor in. So maybe it was achieving offshoot stories or whatever. And yet there were pictures, and I was like, well, those pictures can only have come from, I was savvy enough to know that they wouldn't have sort of set up pictures for something that didn't exist. A magazine wouldn't be able to do that. So, but they were pictures that also had producer Verity Lambert on them, and I don't know if they were labelled or not, because of course they had this photo shoot, because it's Verity Lambert's sort of swan song. It's her exit. So it was a weird sort of melange of publicity shots with the producer, no Doctor. I'd never heard of this story, so I didn't quite. My brain couldn't quite put all the pieces together, and part of the fun of being a Doctor Who fan, of course, is the archaeology, is putting things together. But for a time there were things like that were anomalous, without a central resource in which to compare and contrast and have lists, etc. So it was a weird thing for me, Mission to the Unknown. But I certainly did like the look of the various alien delegates, and then I know there's a picture of the alien delegates in one of the Matrix databanks as well, where the one who looks like Trantis actually also looks like a man with a beard, because the picture is slightly odd. So it's always had this sort of slight sense of mystery and even hauntedness about it. And there's something to be said about the delegates. Perhaps in a separate podcast I might do an indefinable magic on the delegates and the searches into them, because they're very exciting, and as we discover, they change between Mission to the Unknown and the Daleks' Master Plan. So anyway, it's a strange old beast, and it, for me, when I was introduced to it, was more of a source of confusion than many things, and remained that until I think I got Doctor Who: A Celebration, and it had that, the Radio Times 20th anniversary special, and all became clear as to what everything was. But can you imagine the first time you're introduced to the concept of an old Doctor Who story that isn't a Target book and it hasn't got Doctor Who in it? Weird. And also, it seemed a bit, grim, but we'll get to that. So anyway, I have forewarned the denizens of Patreonville in order that they may have their say on this, which they wouldn't do if I recorded this before telling them. So Darcy Smart pops in and says, "Hi, Darcy." Pops in and says, "Here's a bit of a long one for you, Toby. Don't mind if you read it out, but I have to say this. Don't mind if you don't read it out, but I have to say this. It's an odd one indeed, but it is incredibly important. It's an incredibly important production for me. I had seen the 2005 series go to air in Australia, and very soon after noticed they were repeating old episodes during the week. Then I got the Lost in Time box set and decided the black and white material was way more interesting and weird than what I was seeing on TV. Flash forward a few months to Christmas 2005, age 10, and there it was. The Dalek Master Plan audio CD and Claws of Axos on DVD, but that's another story. I listened to it dozens of times, but particularly Mission to the Unknown was played relentlessly. Probably because in a lot of ways it can stand on its own. It's one of those episodes for me that I've experienced so much that watching it back, all of the dialogue and the score run through my ears with such cadence and movement. Lines and music stings sound off in my head seconds before they happen. You can argue its merits or its legitimacy in the DMP saga, or even if it's actually an episode of Doctor Who, but to me this is an all-time classic piece of nasty sci-fi, and I'll love it forever. What we would give to see those delegates unique to this episode move. Oh, Darcy, I absolutely agree 100%. Frank Shales adds, I've got the BBC audio release of Mission to the Unknown, or Dalek Cutaway, or whatever we call it. We call it Mission to the Unknown around these here parts, Frank. On its own on a disc. It was published once as a free giveaway CD with a newspaper, which is handy because I can put it in a DVD case or the shelf separate from the Daleks Master Plan one. Anyway, the reason I mention that is that I too played it to death, so I empathise. I also have Mission to the Unknown as a solo CD, so I must have been given it from a friend who got that newspaper, or did a copy come with SFX magazine? Anyway, I do have a solo one lying around somewhere. Frank comes back and adds, the Loose Cannon Recon tape had a bonus feature I really love, which was reuniting the three human characters' actors with a TARDIS tin type selection of random questions and just letting them reminisce and ramble on with each other. Barry Jackson, Jeremy Young and Edward D'Souza doing their lovey bit and being absolutely enthralling as they range over their careers and all the bizarre and amusing happenings. I believe it's on Dailymotion now. It was free to those of us who sent a blank video cassette to the dubbers, so it isn't copyright infringing. Anyway, Loose Cannon themselves put it up. I commend it to all readers. I do too. I think it may have been one of the very first Loose Cannons I got as well, because I absolutely had to see the reunion of those three actors. I think that's a wonderful thing that those guys did, and I've since been fortunate enough to meet all of the crew. All of the human crew of Mission to the Unknown, but we'll maybe get to that. But that's lovely that they're on that, and it's a really extended extra and the sort of thing fans doing in their own time and distributing for free. I have to say, in the years where I was sort of on my own and sort of falling back into Doctor Who as my personal life took a spiral before it was before Moths, yeah. No, it was during Moths, actually. It was when I was doing Moths by Doctor Who Scarf, but I was on my own again. I did start to collect the recons, and it just felt like it reinvigorated my love for the past of Doctor Who. Whilst the new stuff was being made, it meant I was still in touch with the 60s, and that was very important. I wasn't going to forget the 60s just because there was brand spanking new Doctor Who on. Adam Parkin says, "This is a fun one for me, as I've never read the Target novelisation and got the audio narrated by Peter Purves Purvis a couple of... I've never read the Target novelisation and got the audio narrated by Peter Purvis a couple of Christmases ago. This is a long-winded way of saying I made it more long-winded for you, Adam, by having to read it twice, because I'm bad. Of saying the U-Clan reconstruction was my first experience of this episode. Even if it's a teaser for a longer story, I love it. Dripping in atmosphere, and presumably the actor's sweat, with a real sense of building dread and men out of time. I was fortunate enough, I don't know, Doctor Who just seems to somehow reach out and grab me. I know a couple of people at the University of Central Lancaster, and when the... but I didn't know anybody involved in the production, or so I thought I didn't. But a friend managed to get me access to the screening, so I went along and watched the screening, the premiere screening of Mission to the Unknown. And as it turned out, the guy who's the casting director on it, Terence, he's credited as Terence Chapman, but I know him as Terence Mann. He's an actor. We've been in stuff together. He's a mate. We've done stuff, but I hadn't seen him for ages. And he plunked himself next to me, and I went, "Oh, hello, Terence." And he said, "Oh, I was casting director on this. What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm Doctor Who," and we had an old catch up. So bizarrely, I knew somebody involved with it. Isn't that weird? And yeah, but I'd got so I went all the way over there to see it, and had a great time doing that. But yeah, I got access from an old mucker who also happened to be working there. So it didn't come from any of my Doctor Who contacts, as it were. Jack Sharp says, my first exposure to this was actually via the Ian Levine animation. Yep, I've seen that too. And then via the U-Clan remake. I really must get round to the loose cannon at some point. I will be doing the loose cannon because that to me is the closest to what was broadcast, in the sense that the U-Clan remake is brilliant, but it's obviously not the original actors, although I know I do. My lovely friend Rick Byatt has done me digital copies of everything I could possibly need. So I have every version possible of Mission to the Unknown, and there is the U-Clan remake with the original soundtrack laid over it. So you can have the new actors, but with the older actors' performances. I actually think those new young actors did really good work, sort of evoking the 60s style performance. But I am doing the recon in order not to be distracted, well, so that I get the original actors. And Ian Levine's animation I think is excellent, but I've made a rule not to do animations where I might break that, but for now, for me, it's less distraction. I will be talking about the animation, whereas I'm going to try to talk about the episode itself for as much of it as I can conjure. I know there are pros and cons to doing that, but that's just the way that feels to me the most authentic. While I do enjoy this, says Jack, I question how successful it was as a trailer. Did the audience really understand its nature as a teaser for Masterplan, or were they all just left confused as to where the main cast were and why the story suddenly shifted to ancient Troy next week? Yeah, I think you have a point there, Jack, but I will try to ignore that, because I think there's even something in the audience research for Temple of Secrets, isn't there, where they go, hang on, what happened to the Daleks? So you think they'd tell somebody, but there we go. But I kind of like the fact, as Jason suggested, that this is when they were being experimental and mucking about, and you do things that seem really weird when we look back on them, but that's part of the joy of being a fan. David Gillespie Pratt says, I think this might be one of the last missing episodes I listened to. It was the only reconstruction I didn't get on VHS in the 90s, and my first listen was a preview CD of the narrated soundtrack given away with SFX magazine. Having devoured Masterplan on bootleg cassette for years, Mission came as a bit of a shock. The wonderful deep rasping Dalek voices of the 12-parter were absent, and this lot sounded like they'd come from the chase. They are not the easiest voices to take seriously in this grim tale. Oh, I hadn't thought of that, you know. As for the episode itself, it's a hard one for me to get into. I don't know how well it works as a trailer for Masterplan, as it doesn't really add to that story. Corey's warning message doesn't tell our heroes anything they didn't already know. But what we do have is a mini thriller, and about as bleak as 60s Who could get. Yeah, we do, David. I mean, I agree about the trailer thing, but I'm not sure I care. I love the fact that because of contractual necessity and actor availability, they just go, well, let's just do that then. and just pop it in. And also the fact that it's a landmark in that it's Verity Lambert's last ever episode as well. Is an episode of Doctor Who that doesn't have the Doctor in it. I mean, bonkers. Anthony Carroll, a fascinating episode setting up a classic. Love the delegates and very Britishness of the space crew. And imagine tuning in next week to find yourself in Troy. Yeah, I wish I could. I wish I could see all of this. I love season 3, you know. And it is slightly mysterious because we don't... I mean, it's Verity's last episode, but John Wiles has already got there and said, let's not pay for any telesnaps, eh? Let's save a few quid. So, yeah. Sydney... And let's save a few quid on the season of this year that is mostly missing as well. Sydney Trot says, surely this must be the most reconstructed missing episode of all time. Apart from the BBC audio narrated CD, I have just had a tally up and found 7 different recon versions available. Good Lord, yeah. Well, there we go. Well, I suppose because it's self-contained, you can do it. Joe Llewellyn says, my favourite part of this episode was showing it to my wife and forgetting to tell her it was a recently produced remake of a missing episode. So you were watching the UCLan version. She thought it was a 60s vintage episode. Well done. Well done, UCLan. And I've since met and got to know Andrew Ireland, who is the producer-director. We didn't know each other then, and he occasionally drops me a line. In fact, he's just dropped me a line recently about enjoying what's on the season 7 box set. But yes, fans get everywhere, don't they? But yes, I think they did a great job. I think it's really good. And I might allude to it during what we watch. But I think that that remake is superb. Matt Foy says, an interesting sideline into what a Terry Nation Dalek spin-off may have been like. I love the atmosphere and the sound. As Toby always says, 60s Who sounds more alien than any other era. Thanks, Matt. Somebody's been listening to what I say. I bet viewers were confused ending up in Troy for 4 weeks next, though. Everybody's saying this. Do we know why this was the running order? Holiday? Contractual? Was it the final Verity Lambert, or did I make that up? Delegate Heaven. Yeah, I suppose that, it's the order in which they were made, yeah. But it is odd, isn't it? But I think it's more interesting that it's not immediately before the Daleks' master plan. I really do. I quite like that people that it's an unfolding narrative, and people go, "Hello, what?" Anyway, so I am going to watch the recon of Mission to the Unknown, using the old, that old off-air soundtrack. So it might be at a slightly more languid pace. I think it's if you're watching another version, there might be a time lag as it goes on, because I seem to recall this sounds slightly slow, but that might just be me, but I think so. Anyway, and it's got an announcement right at the top as well. But here we go. Let us watch Mission to the Unknown. Let's see what Doctor Who achieves without having Doctor Who in it. And we're going to press play in 3, 2, 1. Oh yes, this takes me back to listening to things that were recorded seemingly through a sock. I didn't actually listen to this one as though it was recorded through a sock. I think I listened to this the first time it was... Did I listen to this the first time when it was a soundtrack, or when it was a loose cut? Yeah, when it was a soundtrack release, I think. I didn't have a bootleg of it. But I think we can imagine how some of this will have looked. This is obviously repeat footage from the end of Galaxy 4, although it was filmed for Mission to the Unknown, I think. But I did wonder sometimes if there was maybe a reprise involving, the TARDIS crew just looking at a scanner or something in order to get Hartnell his credit. But he's not. He doesn't appear, although he is credited. It would be, even though in Doctor Who: A Celebration it said for 1 week. No, in the early years, I think Jeremy Bentham put for 1 week only. Oh, maybe it's... it doesn't matter. In one of those books, for 1 week only, top billing goes to Edward D'Souza as Mark Corey. He doesn't get top billing because it's actually Hartnell gets top, and then it's in order of appearance. So there's no top billing, as it were, for Edward D'Souza, although he is the undoubted star. But this is Barry Jackson, who we last saw as Ascaris in The Romans, where he didn't say anything. He was there to do the tumbling and falling, but a wonderful actor who had a great career right up until being a regular in Midsummer Murders. I like the music in this. It's stock musical stings. It gives it a slight melodramatic sort of feel that I don't mean pejoratively. I like that this is quite ba ba ba. It gives it it has a kind of B movie feel about it that I like. Less of the B, but more of the movie. The fact that this feels like there's a transition between what Nation's been doing with the Daleks. I mean, Dalek Invasion of Earth is a slight anomaly in there, but, the Daleks is set on an alien planet with sort of, and the Thals are sort of Star Trek-y, even though Star Trek hadn't been on at this point, but Star Trek-y kind of blondie, well-meaning aliens who are slightly soppier versions of humanity, and we see those in sci-fi a lot. And then the chase, which is a bit sort of dafter. But this is where Nation embraces the sort of comic strip potential of the Daleks that we will see fully flower in the better parts of Dalek's master plan, and are probably closer to what he would have done were he having the show made in the States as he'd envisaged, without the Doctor, which is this is sort of template for. And it's sort of gritty and, tough, and these characters are a bit Blake Seven-y. They sort of tell each other off, and they're tough with each other and uncompromising. This isn't the sort of jolly TARDIS crew dynamics where there's a bit of coziness to offset the action adventure. This is tough stuff, and it gives Mission to the Unknown a slightly sort of uncompromising feel that I rather like. For example, we meet our characters, one of them, Garvey, who is infected, and these two, and then we meet these two, Mark Corey and Gordon Larry, who are hurriedly trying to mend a broken spaceship. So they're on the back foot. These characters start at a disadvantage and actually don't make it out of the episode alive, which I think is really, really exciting stuff. And Garvey is infected by something that Nation will do again. We see it in Planet of the Daleks, don't we? Lethal vegetable life. I was going to say indigenous, but one of the plot twists is it's not indigenous to Kembel, where we are. And Garvey doesn't actually last that long because he gets zapped here by our hero Mark Corey. Yeah. So Jeff is dead. Jeff. Jeff. I think Mark Corey is a great name. Mark Corey, super space detective. He's not that. He's licensed to kill. But he's come on. He's different from Doctor Who. I know William Hartnell's Doctor Who threatened to brain a man and all of that, but he's just slapped Gordon Larry, I think. So there's no attempt to make Corey likable. We actually like him. I think we feel his death by the end because he's heroic, but he hasn't got time to soft sell it. This is Terry Nation in tough guy mode, because basically what he's saying is that space is a tough place, and so we don't get much of a chance to get to know Jeff Garvey before he's mercilessly gunned down. And indeed, in the first episode of Dalek's Master Plan, we meet a brilliantly named Kurt Gantry. That's a better name than Jeff Garvey, although they're the same sort of syllable structure. But we've got Jeff and Gordon here, not very spacey names. Where when Douglas Camfield comes along in Dalek's Master Plan, he changes Ronald to Roald, doesn't he? And he changes, various names. He spacifies just to suggest that names have changed a bit, and vowels have moved into syllables, or syllables have been dropped, or whatever, and so yeah, there's a it's slightly less cozy. Douglas Camfield, I think, although he's a relatively new director, I think Derek Martinez is even more new, isn't he? This is his first production. I don't think he'd have had the confidence to say, okay, change some of the names in. It might not have occurred to him, but Martinez is an excellent director. But Camfield goes, no, let's change some of these names to give it to contribute a bit more to this atmosphere of comic strippy future space stuff. Which I think is more effective than having character. You don't want silly space names like Zing Zang Bing Bo, but Brett Vian is better than Brett Walton, for example. And maybe if Camfield had got his hands on this, they would have been called, Jeff Agavu or and Gordo Laurie. I don't know, but he'd have done something better than that. But anyway, yes, Jeff and Gordon seems a little bit quaint. But let us not forget the actors who are playing our two. Well, this is where I love that. What is it? The galaxy of Miros, the constellation of Minos. I love this sort of universe building where the human space service people are just part of a sort of wild and sprawling universe, some of which you only hear word from, you don't have a window to or whatever. And I really like the feel of that. Now, I'm going to let you into a little secret. I've had a few aborted attempts at this because whichever version I've tried to watch on, the sound seems to go out of sync with the pictures. I've done it on the Recon, I've done it on the animated version. So I'm sticking with the Recon, but it might be that my pictures go out of sync with my sound, and I'm following the sound. But either way, it means if you're watching along, I think there's probably some sort of time lag or some sort of issue. So just don't watch along, basically. Yeah, it's another version. I have to make another version of Mission to the Unknown in order to fit this commentary over it. But I like that, it was a Dalek spaceship. It feels like the sort of resurgence of a universal power, even though the Daleks haven't been in it that long ago. This does feel like an attempt to sort of up their threat slightly from the chase, where, partially down to Richard Martin, they become quite jokey, but Nation is not averse to his jokiness himself, but I prefer his here, even though it's arguable that it's actually less Doctor Who-y than something like The Chase, which has its comic interludes and its charms, and this is a bit more like some other series that Nation fancies doing. But I like it when Doctor Who tries a different tone, and I like it when it tries a more adult tone, but that may come from my history of being a child watching Doctor Who wanted it to be grown up, and because I've got older brothers, and I wanted to sort of stand up to school bullies and stuff by saying, look, I like a grown up thing. And I understand now more, and I value more the whimsy and charm of the Doctor Who of season 2 perhaps. But I do really like the attempts to toughen up and intellectualize Doctor Who in season 3. I'm not necessarily suggesting they both happen in the same stories. I think Nation stuff toughens up and some of the historicals intellectualize, but it means I do enjoy season 3 very much, of which this curious anomaly is a part. I think Edward D'Souza is terrific as Mark Corey. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. He has a wonderful voice. He was the man in black on Radio 4, and he is very much the hero, and they do that thing, don't they, where he is space security license to kill, and it's definitely an attempt to make him a bit of a James Bond of space, which is not bad for somebody who exists on television for only 25 minutes. And indeed, when he returns as a voice of a recording in the Daleks Master Plan, it's actually Peter Hawkins doing a different recording from the one we hear here. So Edward D'Souza's Mark Corey is literally only here for the 24 and a half minutes of Mission to the Unknown, but I love this. I love this fact that the Daleks are sort of getting together a band of people from different galaxies. It's a great instinct, I think, Nation has here to say, well, let's, the Daleks are fancy, but let's surround them with all the possibilities of Doctor Who for different and various alien life forms, and that's the sort of wheeze of this adventure. It's not seen through as well as it might be, I don't think, in the Daleks Master Plan. Do go back and listen to my 12-episode commentary of the Daleks Master Plan, in which I probably lament quite a lot the lack of opportunities given to the delegates who've been set up as an integral part of the story, and they could have all have had different characterizations and different motivations and all of that. But I quite like the fact that Lowry here is not someone who is a tough space guy, and that he's been kind of drafted, if you like, under the Emergency Powers Act that Corey has sort of used in order to, and it makes it very convenient, of course, because Corey hasn't actually told anybody about the mission or the nature of the mission or his suspicions. So that adds to the drama, of course, of the fact that, well, if he doesn't get his message through, nobody's going to know. I mean, as it turns out, the Doctor and everybody then find out. So by the time they get his message, it's this is pretty disposable. But Doctor Who is full of things that are disposable that I cherish, and this is one of them. I think I would love to see this. Well, partially because we don't have any pictures of the human cast. The recon that I'm watching has screen grabs of them from other things. I know that Jeremy Young was appearing in the Scottish play at the time and had a week between, I think, being cast and rehearsal started, so this fitted exactly into his schedule. Jeremy Young was a very keen correspondent. He always replied to letters, so I had letters from him back in the day, and then when I was doing Who's Round, when I'd sort of done Who's Round, I thought, well, I'll try him anyway, because I'd got Waris Hussein to do Unearthly Child, and I'd got Edward D'Souza to do Mission to the Unknown. But I went to see Jeremy anyway. But Jeremy is now sadly no longer with us. But a terrific and highly regarded drama teacher, but an actor with a long career. He's been the first Doctor Who baddie in the very first. So he's the first person from. Oh no, he's not, because Alethea Charlton returns in the Time Meddler from the first story. So he's the second person to return from the very first story, and then we get Derek Newick in Inferno and Eileen Way in Creature from the Pit, and poor old Howard Lang never returns, but the cast of the first story do pretty well. But yeah, Jeremy Young, he was married to Kate O'Mara. I don't know if they were married, but they certainly had a relationship. I think, yeah. And somebody did tell me that Jeremy Young, as an older man, was in a relationship. Well, maybe I shouldn't. Was with a much younger actress, and I remember thinking, "Well done, Jeremy." Quite a well-known actress, but I won't commit that just in case that's gossip and or not true. But she's an actress who I also know had a relationship with another older actor. So maybe just had a thing for older actors. But anyway, good luck, everybody. Have a wonderful time. I mean, I can imagine. I think. We can imagine what a lot of this will have looked like, because we know what I think we've got a picture of the rocket, haven't we? We know that they can do jungles at this point, and I suspect the jungle set will have been pretty fancy. We've got all the interior stuff with the delegates, but I'll talk about them when we get to them. But we don't have pictures of Mark Corey, Gordon Lowry, and Jeff Garvey. We didn't for a while. I don't think had pictures of the Varga plants, or they were around, but I'd never seen them. But I remember being quite excited to see the sort of cotton woolly, spiky devils that they were. I like the fact that this is a sort of a bit of a race against time and a race against the odds. And I don't think you quite believe that nobody's going to get out of here alive. I don't think Doctor Who has been quite that bleak up until this point. And it's a bit like Inferno, isn't it? Where you're in an alternative universe, so you can kill everybody because then the Doctor gets back to the proper place, and you can have your cake and eat it. Here, because there's no need to see these characters again, you may as well kill them, and it makes the Daleks, who've been sort of comic relief in the chase, it does make the Daleks feel like a bit more of a bit more of a threat again, and now Lowry is a bit stuffed because and I think you can hear it on the soundtrack. I don't know if it's in the script, but he's definitely doing that thing that you see in movies where people suck the venom out and spit it out, but of course it's too late. And Nation's great at that, at making and again, we've never quite had it environments, the very place that you land is as dangerous as the plot or the monsters. And Nation is very good at making, the terrain a threat itself. And yeah, we see it again, and it's a bit sort of cliche or comic strip. But Alien is part of the reason Alien is such a palpable threat is because he's not just a monster; he's a monster that bleeds acid. That adds to the. We add a layer of jeopardy everywhere you go. Well, I think the fact that the plant life of this jungle can get you as much as the things that are chasing you, it means that the act of being chased is fraught even if you don't get caught. And I think there is now. Here's Malfa, who I think has an excellent mask. If you look closely, you can see he's got a sort of slightly wrinkled swimming cap. But I think well, we've got all the aliens here, but Malfa is the one voiced by Robert Cartland, who has previously been the voice of the Rills in episode 3 and 4 of Galaxy 4. So he's sort of part of the same production. And he's the speaking alien, and I hadn't realised that Cartland was actually my brother has only acted once in as a boy in the Ludlow Festival production of Richard III, starring Edward Woodward and Jerome Willis from The Green Death, and Buckingham, a really good part, was played by Robert Cartland, who I haven't seen in an awful lot else. I mean, he was just a sort of jobbing actor, really, but Buckingham was a good part to be playing. So my brother has Robert Cartland's autograph, and I do not. Would you believe? But I think he's got a good voice here. I think he performs it well. And in fact, funny enough, when I was looking at the Euclan one, the bit I'd been really looking forward to was to see the monsters, because they're the sort of headline news. And I actually found the sort of them shuffling about a bit and the costumes brushing against each other. Quite often, we have pictures, black and white pictures, and we've got a lot of black and white pictures of these delegates. And look, some of them get lines here where they're going, agreed. We don't know which ones speak and which ones don't. So there's a couple of them who probably get a couple of extra quid, but will have got a nice close-up as well. But we don't know. Well, it's another of the mysteries, let alone the mysteries of the delegates. I mean, this is the fascinating thing to me. And they actually are all quite vocal, even though Malfa is the only one that's credited. Now, some of them then do get credited in the paperwork. Sam Mansory is credited as Centrial. Now, we know that Sam Mansory is the one with the sort of space helmet on with the spike on top, because he is the actor of colour. Ronald Rich is credited as Trantis, and we know which one Ronald Rich is because he's the tall one with the white sort of the white tall helmet. But he's credited as Trantis, and yet Trantis is the one with the spiky face in the Daleks' master plan. So they reallocate the delegates. So we don't actually know, and then nobody addresses anybody by name in episode 2 of the Daleks' master plan, which we have, and then some of them appear a bit later. And so it's slightly confusing. I won't get bogged down in the delegates now, because there's all sorts of anomalies, and they definitely change what they're called. That's the simple answer, which is actually took us everyone a while to realise. Jack Rayner's done some good work on this. Andrew Pixley's done some good work on this. I've also worked out they appear in Daleks Master Plan episode 3 with the extras wrongly described as appearing as convicts. But let's not get into that. So let's see what happens if any of those episodes turn up. So there's a sort of whimpering Lowry here, because he's been infected, and that's rather horrible, because also he knows that Corey will kill him because he killed Garvey. So basically he's a dead man walking, which is again a sort of gritty and unpleasant and he says, "I'm sorry," doesn't he? He apologizes. It's rather abject, and one assumes that tough guy, handsome, deep-voiced, brave, licensed to kill Corey is pretty ruthless. But I hope Edward D'Souza afforded him a sort of, that's a shame, Larry was a nice guy kind of look, but we don't know, do we? But it really shows what the stakes are. I actually think probably we're attracted to this because we would love to see the delegates, but I suspect actually the stuff with the humans will be better, because they're 3 really good actors doing exciting stuff. And I think this was hit home to me when I watched the UCLan ones, where the least, obviously there's a couple of Dalek scenes that were done by models for various practical reasons, but there's a likelihood, isn't there, that like the big Christmas tree one will have probably wobbled a bit and creased a bit, and some of those costumes perhaps might look better in those beautiful shots that we have than they would do crowded around a set, although the set actually looks slightly bigger than the one they used in the UCLan in the pictures that we have. So I still have hope for the delegates, but because they're quite fun in Dalek's Master Plan, although I think the decision to make everyone clap and bash the hit the table and walk in a different way is an inventive thing that Camfield does, but does tread the line between the comedic and the exciting. But I think they look great. I love them. I love the idea behind them. And I've been talking through the extermination of Mark Corey. Mark Corey is brilliant because he's battling to. He's really enunciating what the problem is, which is that the galaxy, the universe is under threat from the Daleks and this gang of it's not a gang, is it? It's like it's allies throughout space, and he's rushing to record this, and he doesn't make it. And I think this is pretty extraordinary stuff. And this episode ends with basically a whole load of aliens and the Daleks going, "We're going to win this. We've got this sewn up, because look at all us brilliant aliens. Look at all of us brilliant, scary aliens. And the one person that knows about it has been killed." So I think that's really gripping. I think that's really exciting. And I think I think it justifies its place as a unique piece of Doctor Who history that I think actually sometimes gets overlooked. And I know there's some polls recently where, what episodes do you want back or whatever. And Mission, I don't think, did particularly well. I don't think people really think of it, but I think it's rather special. I think those 3 actors are rather special. I love the fact that I've met all of the humans. I've met D'Souza and Jackson and Young, in fact, and I've interviewed one-on-one Jeremy and Edward, but not sadly Barry. But I did get to do him for the commentary, and that my brothers met Robert Cartland, I did write to Ronald Rich, but got a note back saying that he wasn't well enough. He's not credited in this, Ronald Rich. He has been Gunnar the Giant. And a fact I let out on Blue Sky and Twitter and everything the other day is that Johnny Clayton, who plays the one with the spiky face, who we will come to know as Trantis, but won't be Trantis in this because Ronald Rich is Trantis. Oh, it's confusing. Is Reg Cox, who's found nearly dead in the very first episode of EastEnders. So he has a televisual claim to fame outside Doctor Who. I don't think he's in another Doctor Who, though, bizarrely. He's only in this Doctor Who, and he's the storyline of the first ever episode of EastEnders. So there we go. Isn't that fun and exciting? I think Pat Gorman is one of them as well, isn't he? Anyway, that's the delegates for now. I think I might have to do my own indefinable magic on the delegates. So that was a bit of a chore actually, because it kept going out of sync, and I've no idea why. It went out of sync when I watched it on the hard drive. It went out of sync when I'd exported it onto my computer. It even went out of sync when I was watching the version that's uploaded onto the internet. So I don't know quite why that kept slipping out, but I hope so. Any extra ers and ums were the fact that I was trying to account for the fact that what I was seeing hadn't necessarily happened yet, and what I was hearing was important. But I hope it made a certain sort of sense. I still thoroughly enjoyed the episode. I love the darkness of it. I love the grittiness of it. So I've got to choose 4 things about Mission to the Unknown that I love, and one is that it's the grimness. It's the fact that this in the sort of melodrama. If you that might be a different thing, but definitely the grimness, the atmosphere that Nation has given this, with it being tough and uncompromising, and inject some serious back into the Dalek antics. It's serious yet also quite comic strippy, but I think that's an excellent melding, and I think it points the way forward, as I say, to the more successful elements of the Daleks' master plan. Number 2 is the delegates. I love the delegates for the various reasons I've gone into, not just because I love the pictures of them and what we can see of them, and the fact that it's a really smart thing to do with Doctor Who, to go, why don't we have a menagerie of aliens? That's why it's another reason I love Curse of Peladon, because it goes, an alien race is all well and good, but why don't we have loads? We can, and I think that and actually what it does to add to the threat of the Daleks as well is extremely successful. So yes, the delegates. All of my things are sort of similar. The fact that everybody dies, is that the same as the grimness? I like the universe building. The fact that Corey's getting reports from here and there, so he has to go and sort of investigate on his own, which then, of course, helps us with the fact that not everybody knows what's going on in Dalek's master plan, but we do, because we've had this preview. So yeah, although the events of this story have no impact on the storyline of Dalek's master plan, it does serve to let us know that this stuff isn't just happening. This stuff's already in operation, as it were. So, but how do and I even like it's only stock music, but I like the kind of that melodramatic score that it has. I love Edward D'Souza as Mark Corey. I think Mark Corey, being a tough, pragmatic hero, has shades of almost anti-hero, isn't he? So it's a bit James Bondy, it's a bit Blake Seveny. I love that tough dynamic, but they're all kind of. But that shows to me what a cohesive production it is. That a lot of the different things that I like, the music, the dialogue, the characterization, the general feel of it, they all serve to make it what this is, which is a fairly grim 25 minutes of death and destruction. So. And we know it will have been well directed, because I think Derek Martinez is a very good director, and even in Galaxy 4, his placement of people means that the pictures are always very rewarding and are staged well in terms of the dynamics between the characters. So I think we can imagine how some of this would have looked, and it's got the showpiece moment of the transformation into Varga plant, which will have probably been a simple sort of series of overlays or whatever, but that's okay. That's okay. I think it will have looked all right. I suspect they will have shuffled slightly unconvincingly, a bit like the fungoids, but they're a slightly better design. They're not like umbrellas. Instead, they're like cactuses made of cotton wool. All right. Let's just hope he didn't show their legs. And one of them was played by Leslie Weeks, who was a rather contemporary of Edward de Souza, who was not doing as well as I think de Souza had expected that he might have done, or indeed Leslie Weeks had probably thought he would have done, having been a bit of a star when he was in de Souza's class or year. Anyway, I've got to choose 4 things. So the tough, grim atmosphere, the delegates are the 2. I think the fact that everybody dies, it is kind of related, isn't it? But it adds to that sort of uniqueness of certainly what it is at this period in the show's history. I suppose I choose. No, everyone dies. No, actually, and I didn't refer to. I kept meaning to refer to it during the episode and kept getting distracted. I think partially because of the issues I was having. But the sound, I've always celebrated the sounds of the 60s, and the sound of the 60s is particularly weird. And I think Mission to the Unknown is an exemplar in showing, or not showing, in demonstrating hourly how Doctor Who is effective. And how the work of the Radiophonic Workshop beyond the music is so much a part of Doctor Who, particularly in the 60s. And in fact, the sound, music-wise, is just stings and stock music, which is very exciting because it's all quite old-fashioned, and because it doesn't feel like it's been made specifically for this, and it's been sort of laid on at dramatic points. That gives it a feel all its own as well. But also, it's the jungle. It's the jungle, and actually the contrast between the jungle and where the Daleks are hanging out. But I love those jungle sounds that are just full on and all over the place and alien and very 60s Doctor Who. And I think they highlight the work of Brian Hodgson, who is one of the true heroes of Doctor Who. And the special sounds guys, him and Dick Mills, pretty much exclusively throughout the whole history of classic Doctor Who, are such an important part and often get overlooked. Because we often talk, when we talk about the sound, we talk about the music of Doctor Who. But Brian Hodgson's special sounds and the sounds of the jungle and the contrast with the jungle and the Dalek control room, I think, is excellent. So whilst I love the fact that everyone dies, I think that can be part of the grimness, actually. And the music, the sound, is not the music, the soundtrack, the whole ambience, the aural template is my thing number 3. So what would be the 4th thing? I mean, it's all sort of pretty similar, isn't it? But I just like it for what it is. I like the fact that it's this unique, weird thing that has risen out of anomalous circumstances within the production of Doctor Who, that means that the show can one week do this thing that when I first came across it was really confusing to me, which made the archaeology sort of slightly harder and odder and meant that I didn't quite have a grasp of what it was. So yeah, the fact that it exists at all within the format of Doctor Who and what it represents, which is itself and nothing else, because there is nothing quite like it. So those are my 4 things. The grim atmosphere, throwing us forward to the Daleks' master plan and sort of reframing the Daleks from how they've been in the chase, and forward echoes of Blake 7 and that kind of feel as well. The fact that it's really grim, including the fact that everybody dies, the delegates, the sound, the special sound. And the fact that it is what it is, that it's Mission to the Unknown, that it's unique, this unique thing. Yeah. What has Jason Thompson chosen? I bet he hasn't chosen those things. Let's see what Jason Thompson has chosen as his favourite things.
Okay, so what did I like about Mission to the Unknown? What were my favourite aspects of it? It's a single episode, and yet I've managed to find 4 things that I think make it pretty special. Number 1 is the mere fact that it exists and what it is. It's almost a spin-off before Doctor Who spin-offs were a thing, because the Doctor isn't in it. This is a Dalek story. That's all it is. Now, I know it became a prelude to the Daleks' master plan, and all the business with Mark Corey and his information is part of the narrative of that story. So this was kind of a trailer, but taken on its own, it's, you know, this is Terry Nation trying to write Daleks without the Doctor, and it works. It works really, really well. So you don't miss the Doctor in this episode, and I think it's a brilliant piece of work. That's the first thing, I think.
Oh, well, I kind of think that's a point for me, isn't it? I do also notice that Jason has sent me a video and the sound is going out of sync with that. So maybe it's not a problem with any of the versions of Mission to the Unknown I was watching, but something that is wrong with my computer. Which is annoying because I had it fixed not that long ago. But anyway, I just mentioned that in case there were areas of uncertainty, and one of the whole reasons of choosing Mission to the Unknown so is that I could do it really quickly, and it's taken about as long to do this as it has to do a 4-parter. Oh, the best laid plans. I'm on the back foot. I'm under duress. I'm like Mark Corey, but not as cool.
My second favourite thing about Mission to the Unknown is that this is the point at which the Daleks are set up to be the universal conquerors, the bad guys, the infamous monsters that everyone knows about. Because previously they started off as battle-scarred survivors confined to their city on Skaro, but they were so popular they immediately became spacefaring conquerors in the Dalek invasion of Earth. But this is the story where we get the feeling that everybody knows about them. Mark Corey, the Special Security Space Service, they know about the Daleks. They're talking about their galactic conquests in other parts of the universe. And here they are planning to take over the entire universe. So this is the point at which the Daleks became the great universal conquerors that we all came to know and love.
That's a good one, and it's not one that I came across, but I certainly picked that up from this episode. That yes, and because they weren't designed to be the Daleks that, as Jason puts it, we know and love, were they? They were designed to be one-off creations for a one-off adventure in one-off circumstances. They're the survivors of this atomic war on this planet, and they're dependent on the city that they've built, and they die at the end. And they've had to be repurposed. And we have Dalek Invasion of Earth, where we sort of gloss over some of the reasons of their survival. The chase then comes along and sort of dicks about with them, really, where, you know, Spooner is changing the tone of the show, and he and Nation are simpatico because they've both got comedy form. And go back and listen to, you know, I used to hate the chase. I get on rather well with it, thanks to my guest Darryl McLean when we do it for Happy Times and Places, one of the earliest ones that I did, and I did enjoy doing it. But I have to say this is much more my style, even though I'm a comedian, even though I celebrate the fact that a lot of what makes Doctor Who work is that it has a sense of fun and a zestiness about it that stops it being po-faced. Yet I'm celebrating this for being po-faced. But there we go. But yes, this I think paints the way towards the future where the Daleks are recognised as this scourge of the universe rather than one-off city dwellers, you know, city dwelling threats. Good choice. I don't think I can get a point for that though.
My third favourite thing about Mission to the Unknown is the sounds. The whole episode, apart from the sequences set within the Dalek control room and the Dalek city, is just full of jungle sounds that sound so unearthly and so wild. It's amazing. The soundscapes in the 1960s era of Doctor Who were brilliant, and you'll hear these things again in the Daleks' master plan. But it really does convey the totally hostile environment that the Mark Corey and Lowry have found themselves in, even though we can't see it. And I have a suspicion that if we were able to see it, possibly it wouldn't seem quite so hostile. I know the jungle looked fairly impressive in the Daleks' master plan, but I'm not sure. So if it ever comes back, it will be fascinating to see if the sights match the sounds.
Yes, and I said it there. I barely said it during the episode, but maybe that's because of the dissonance between the sights and sounds. But yes, I love the soundscapes of the 60s. I particularly love Brian Hodgson's jungly stuff that he does, and add to that melodramatic incidental music. But no, it's particularly that jungle soundscape. But the fact that environment is delineated by sound, and of course we're not that far away from television being radio with pictures, and so sound, was very much at the forefront of the experience of making drama, and I think Brian Hodgson's weird soundscapes are fantastic. So we're at 2-2, so it's at least going to be a draw.
My final favourite thing about Mission to the Unknown is a bit meta. It's that because this was, I think, Verity Lambert's final episode as producer of Doctor Who, there are an awful lot of publicity photographs taken of all the alien delegates and Verity herself. And I find those fascinating, because if we didn't have those, we wouldn't have the mystery of who is who, because we have delegates in Mission to the Unknown that do not appear in the Daleks' master plan, most notably that big black Christmas tree chap. And I know there's been an awful lot of stuff written up about which delegate is which, and who goes on for master plan, who's slightly changed, who's new. Fascinating stuff. But the other interesting thing about those photographs is that some of them seem to depict things that do not happen on the episode at all, because there's one photograph with Malfa holding a ray gun of some kind and pointing it at somebody. It appears to be a functional prop because it's got a wire hanging out the end, which would have been used to connect it to a power source so that it could light up on cue. But that doesn't happen anywhere in the episode. So what's that photograph all about? But yes, all those marvellous publicity photos of the alien delegates is my final favourite thing about Mission to the Unknown.
Oh, well, I don't think I quite get that point, do I? I'm so close. Because I chose the delegates, I didn't choose those photos, although those photos are very much part of my experience of digesting and learning about and understanding and tasting before digesting Mission to the Unknown. So are we at 2 apiece? And can I maybe get a soupçon of 3? We'll call it an honourable score draw, which means that Jason and I are still somewhat simpatico, or either that or he is weakling scum and I have an aptitude to defeat him. But I don't see it like that. But I wouldn't say victory is assured. But I'm always on the cusp of it, it seems, when Jason is involved. So I'm going to ask him back millions of times. What else does he have to say? There's a little bit left on his video.
I was going to choose something. It's my favourite thing about that recording, but I thought it'd be a bit of a cheat. Because it's not actually about the episode itself, but it's that the recording starts just before the opening titles. And thanks to that, we now know that through the narration of a BBC continuity announcer, immediately following Mission to the Unknown was the first of a new series of comedy programmes about an eccentric family called the Munsters, which is an odd little bit of TV trivia that I found quite entertaining the first time I put that tape in. So thank you for inviting me onto your podcast, Toby. I hope you enjoyed Mission to the Unknown as much as I do. I can be found on Twitter at Jason_JTT, where you may find my ramblings about Doctor Who entertaining. At the moment, I have an ongoing thread which was inspired by one of your podcasts, actually, about cliffhangers, and I've decided to tackle every single one. I'm currently up to somewhere in season 11. I've got a way to go. And my other threads, which seem to be getting quite a bit of traction, are my Doctor Who actors in other shows. I've just done one on Space 1999. I've done Blake 7. I've done Porridge. And I have plenty more up my sleeve for later. So if anyone wishes to find me, that's where I am. So thanks again. I look forward to hearing more of your podcasts. Bye for now.
Oh, well, thanks, Jason. And all those projects sound fascinating, so do go and avail yourselves of them. And he's really entertaining podcaster, Jason, and a nice chap, and obviously somebody with whom I am slightly in sync in terms of opinions and observations. Well, look, I hope you enjoyed that. as I say, it's been more of a palaver for me than I'd hoped. Perhaps nothing's ever quite clear when it comes to Mission to the Unknown. A bit of, when we talked about Ambassadors of Death with Mark Wright, there's a bit of its appeal was that it's slightly unreachable because it's not quite there. And I like what Jason was saying about the pictures and the bit with Malfa and the gun. I think they do try and rationalise that in the UClan recreation. But yes, there isn't a bit where Malfa points a gun at the Daleks and threatens them, because that's not the plan. There's also not a bit where he lights a fag for Verity Lambert, but we know why that's there. But yes, it does mean that although we have all of this stuff, often the evidence can raise more questions than it asks. But that to me is all part of the fun of Doctor Who, and why I think I had to choose an element of it that was not about what happened on screen, but about its very existence. Because the appeal of stuff sometimes exists outside the 25 minutes that take place watching it, if you're a real nerd. And I'm a real nerd, and I'm sure most of you are real nerds too. We should all get together and nerk our way across the universe. So anyway, I'm overjoyed to have done a score draw for Mission to the Unknown. That's the only way it could be, really, I'm sure. And for Jason's return. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Thank you for joining me. I'd really like to see it, though. Do please somebody dig it out, because I think I have a desire to watch Edward D'Souza, particularly. He was one of my prime targets too for Happy Times and Places. And in fact, I wrote to him and he sent lots of lovely signed pictures back, but didn't agree to do it. And then Margot Hayhoe got in touch with him, and then he emailed me and said, Margot said, why don't you come out? And so then I went, and we had a lovely time, and he had a gin and tonic, and I had a cup of tea and a muffin, and he guffawed a lot and was delightful, and his wife was delightful. He's sadly not very well right now, I think, Mr. D'Souza, which is a shame, but I was absolutely delighted to be welcomed into his home. And he's he was a prime scalp for me, and I'm so glad that I got him. But do avail yourself of Loose Cannon's reunion of the three astronauts, which is absolutely invaluable stuff. So thanks to Jason, thanks to Loose Cannon, thanks to Rick Bryant for giving me the various versions, and thanks to you all for listening. Until once again we mission into the unknown and hope to transform it into a happy time and place. This is Toby Haydock. Thanks very much. Licensed to kill you with trivia and with not knowing how to end a podcast, which I'm going to do right now. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Jason Thompson, who can be found on Twitter at Jason_JTT. I'm grateful to Jason and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, Peter Burns, James Curray-Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, William Remmers, Nigel Sharp, Mel Jones, the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Taran Woodbeasts, Richard Harris, Jasper Ferguson, John Davey, Paul Gibbons, Tim Harding, Nigel Bromley, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Peter Chamberlain, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Paul Dunn, El Pandras, Susie Ferguson, Jason Gorman, Paul Harris, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Ashley Knight, Joe Llewellyn and Philip Marsh. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock, and for as little as £3 a month, you get advance releases, bonus material, your own exclusive podcast, your own exclusive behind-the-scenes access to some of the Blu-ray and DVD work that I do, and monthly AMAs, that's all exclusive too. And a lovely community there who are now starting to join in with the Happy Times of Places and get their comments read out, which has added a real new dimension to proceedings. So that's for as little as £3 a month. There are higher tiers, but everything is available at the lowest tier. It's a pay what you can system, which I think works best. And it's really nice over there. I'd love it if you could join us. That's at patreon.com/Toby Haydock. If you want to contribute financially, but not do any of that malarkey, you could go to kofi.com/Toby Haydock, which is there for people that want to, just throw a few coins into my hat as they walk past me, as I hustle and bustle and what's it called when you play music on the underground? when you hustle and bustle. Why am I forgetting words? I'm getting really old now. See, yes, if you want to throw some money in my hat as I struggle to complete a metaphor because I can't remember the word for busk. I can't remember the word busk. So clearly I need some financial help in order to get my brain looked at. You can do that at kofi.com/Toby Haydock. But what costs you nothing is to, if you can remember, because I can't really count on anybody remembering anything. I can't remember the word for busk. If you want to go to YouTube and like and subscribe everything there, like and subscribe anywhere that you get these podcasts, and if you could give them 5-star ratings and a few lines of review, that would be lovely. I'm all over social media. I'm on Instagram at toby.haydock. YouTube I've mentioned. Please like and subscribe there. I've got a Facebook page. I'm on Twitter still at Toby Haydock. And these podcasts have their own feed at Haydock Podcasts. And I've joined Blue Sky too, so find me there. Right, this has been such a palaver. I've got to stop because the day has run away with me, and I've now got, having taken a bit longer to do this, I've now got to go for a run because I'm trying to run 3 times a week, and I scheduled a run in for today hours ago, and poor old Bernard has been very patient. He likes coming for a run with me, but when I'm going away from the house, he runs in my blind spot just behind me, because I've tried to make him go forward and he looks backward. He likes to have an eye on you, but then once I've gone round the park and I'm then heading back, he runs in front of me because he goes, "I'm going home, I know the way." So I'm going to go and do that now, and hopefully, unlike the residents of the crashed spaceship, we will not be pricked by any hazardous wildlife. We will not be chased by any murderous pepperpots, and we will make it back in one shape. But if not, this is Toby Haydock's recording that I need to put onto the rocket and send so that you can listen to it, and hopefully whatever you listen to it by, the sound doesn't go out of sync. Oh, that's another thing I've got to do.